Welcome back, warrior. All right. We are on Doctrine and Covenants 57. I don't know if you felt the weight of that all right, but it's been a rough couple days. Few days. It's been more than a couple days. It feels like a couple days. Anyways, I feel like Summer and I have gotten to a rough start. And I wish we could start summer all over again and be like, hey, can we redo this summer? And I would choose different things to do because our kids are allergic to life. And I'm like, I'm not having the best time with that. So thanks for listening. We continue to do these things to help stay close to the Spirit so that we know what we need to continue to do, right? Or stop doing, right? What can we start doing? What can we stop doing? And so, anyway, I wish I could reset the summer and see what I would choose to do instead, you know? I think one of my kids is going to need to, or maybe both my kids are going to need to move to Ireland so that they don't have allergies. I'm like, what sports do they play? Who knows? Anyway. All right, historical background. On Doctrine and Covenants section 57, this revelation was the first to be received in Jackson County, Missouri. Joseph and his companions traveled the 900 miles from Kirtland to Missouri, and the prophet Joseph will now set foot in the land of Zion for the first time. Joseph wrote this in his journal. Joseph wrote of this journey. This is what he says. Also, I know, like we live in a world that's so amazing and we don't have to cross 900 miles on foot. And so good thing they didn't have allergy problems, or maybe they did. What did they do? What kind of holistic things did they do to help with their allergies, right? Anyways, okay. On the 19th of June, in company with Sidney Rigdon, Martin Harris, Edward Partridge, William W. Phelps, Joseph Coe, Algernon S. Gilbert, and his wife, I started from Kirtland, Ohio, for the land of Missouri, agreeable to the commandment before received, wherein it was promised that if we were faithful, the land of our inheritance, even the place for the city of the New Jerusalem, should be revealed. We went by wagon, canal boats, and stages to Cincinnati. We left Cincinnati in a steamer and landed at Louisville, Kentucky, where we were detained 3 days in waiting for a steamer to convey us to St. Louis. At St. Louis, myself, brothers Harris, Phelps, Partridge, and Co. went by land on foot to Independence, Jackson County, Missouri, where we arrived about the middle of July, and the rest of the company came by water a few days later. Notwithstanding the corruptions and abominations of the times and the evil spirit manifested towards us on account of our belief in the Book of Mormon at many places and among various persons, yet the Lord continued his watchful care and loving kindness to us day by day. And we made it a rule wherever there was an opportunity to read a chapter in the Bible and pray, and these seasons of worship gave us great consolation. It's true. These seasons of worship help us, right? I'm sorry. Okay. The meeting of our brethren, Oliver Cowdery, Ziba Peterson, Frederick G. Williams, and Peter Whitmer Jr., who had long awaited our arrival, was a glorious one and moistened with many tears. It seemed good and pleasant for brethren to meet together in unity, but our reflections were many, coming as we had from a highly cultivated state of society in the East and standing now upon the confines or western limits of the United States, and looking into the vast wilderness of those that sat in darkness. How natural it was to observe the degradation, leanness of intellect, ferocity, and jealousy of the people that were nearly a century behind the times, and to feel for those who roamed about without the benefit of civilization, refinement, or religion, yea, and exclaim in the language of the prophets, when will the wilderness blossom as the rose? When will Zion be built up in her glory? And where will thy temple stand, upon which all nations shall come in the last days? Our anxiety was soon relieved by receiving Doctrine and Covenants 57. Joseph Smith, end quote. Okay. So, as you study this section, notice how the Lord directs these concerned saints in these first steps to build up Zion. All right, and then we have the little excerpt at the top there. Revelation given through Joseph Smith the prophet in Zion, Jackson County, Missouri, July 20th, 1831. In compliance with the Lord's command to travel to Missouri, where he would reveal the land of your inheritance. The elders had journeyed from Ohio to Missouri's western border. Joseph Smith contemplated the state of the Lamanites and wondered, when will the wilderness blossom as a rose? When will Zion be built up in her glory? And where will thy temple stand, unto which all nations shall come in the last days? Subsequently, he received this revelation. Let's learn how to read. Oh, it reset. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay, Doctrine and Covenants 57, verse 1. Hearken, O ye elders of my church, saith the Lord your God, who have assembled yourselves together according to my commandments in this land, which is the land of Missouri, which is the land which I have appointed and consecrated for the gathering of the saints. Wherefore this is the land of promise and the place for the city of Zion. And thus saith the Lord your God, if you will receive wisdom here is wisdom. Behold, the place which is now called Independence is the center place, and a spot for the temple is lying westward upon a lot which is not far from the courthouse. Okay. So before this revelation, the saints knew that Zion would be on the borders of the Lamanites. And then they later learned it would be in Missouri. But where in Missouri, and where will the temple be? It is easy for the saints to merely see an unsettled, rugged wilderness. They may not yet see what the Lord sees very often, right? We can never see what the Lord sees. In fact, I feel like we're so distracted, but also veiled by the world and by Satan's strategies, keeping us from being able to see what the Lord sees, whether it's in us, whether it's in our things that we can do, whether it's in a place that we want to go, or whether it's a place that we need to develop, So anyway, he says, so they may not yet see what the Lord sees, but he makes his position clear. This is the place for the city of Zion, and Independence will be the center place. It is likely that the saints would not have fully understood what center place meant, that they would not have had the understanding of how the stakes of Zion would fill the earth yet. This location will play a crucial central role, and we are yet to see how the Lord envisions this. The Lord then identified the location for the building of the temple, which was westward from the courthouse. Elder McConkie taught, let Israel gather in the stakes of Zion in all nations. Let every land be a Zion to those appointed to dwell there. But still there is a center place, a place where the chief temple shall stand, a place to which the Lord shall come, a place whence the law shall go forth to govern all the earth. And that center place is what men now call Independence in Jackson County, Missouri. The site is selected, the place is known, the decree has gone forth, and the promised destiny is assured. End quote. Elder Bruce R. McConkie, new witness for the Articles of Faith. Why did I say? Okay. And then there's another quote from Joseph Fielding Smith. He says, the center place where the city New Jerusalem is to be built is in Jackson County, Missouri. It was never the intention to substitute Utah or any other place for Jackson County, end quote. Okay. And then President Brigham Young, he says, excuse me, are we going back to Jackson County? Yes. When? As soon as the way opens up. Are we all going? Oh no, of course not. The country is not large enough to hold our present numbers, end quote. President Brigham Young, Journal Discourses. Okay. So it's interesting to note that when the saints had to flee Zion, the language will become about redeeming Zion and how when it does happen, it will come through the Lord's power, not man's. Okay, so we're now on verse 4. And these verses are the ones that make me think, do I need to be buying stuff in Missouri? Like, do I need to buy land there? You know, I feel like I don't even have land here. I mean, we have a mortgage and a home and stuff, but I'm saying, like, do we need to invest in land over there? Do I need to, like, buy a plot with a friend or something, you know, so that we can go over there? I still never understood that 100%. Because, yeah, if we're supposed to be doing that, then we're in the wrong place. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it feels like, well, I know it was right for us to move here. So I don't know, right? Do I hurry and go get some real estate over there? Who knows? Okay, verse 4. Wherefore it is wisdom that the land should be purchased by the saints, and also every tract lying westward, even unto the line running directly between Jew and Gentile, and also every tract bordering by the prairies, inasmuch as my disciples are enabled to buy lands. Inasmuch as we're enabled to buy lands, see? Behold, this is wisdom, that they may obtain it for an everlasting inheritance. So maybe not for us, but for the kids, maybe for the grandkids. I don't know. And let my servant Sidney Gilbert stand in the office to which I have appointed him to receive monies to be an agent unto the church to buy land in all the regions round about, inasmuch as can be done in righteousness and as wisdom shall direct. Maybe we buy land and start an Airbnb there until we need to move there. So many things. And let my servant, I know, I'm like interjecting some things. This is the ADHD talking. Okay. And let my servant Edward Partridge stand in the office to which I have appointed him, and divide unto the saints their inheritance, even as I have commanded, and also those whom he has appointed to assist him. And again, verily I say unto you, let my servant Sidney Gilbert plant himself in this place, and establish a store, that he may sell goods without fraud, that he may obtain money to buy lands for the good of the saints, and that he may obtain whatsoever things the disciples may need to plant them in their inheritance. And also let my servant Sidney Gilbert obtain a license. Behold, here is wisdom, and whoso readeth, let him understand. Okay, so I'm reading this, so let me understand this. That he may send goods also unto the people, even by whom he will, as clerks employed in his service. I understood zero of that. That he may send goods. Okay, so he's sending stuff also unto the people. Okay, also unto, okay. Even by whom he will, whoever he wants, as clerks employed in his service. So like assistants, he has assistants. I don't know. So let my servant Sidney Gilbert obtain a license. A license? What kind of license? Maybe it's a real estate license. Maybe that's what he means. And he's going to have an assistant who's going to help out. I know. Sometimes the scriptures aren't so easy for me to understand. Okay, verse 10. And thus provide for my saints, that my gospel may be preached unto those who sit in darkness and in the region and shadow of death. And again, verily I say unto you, let my servant William W. Phelps be planted in this place and be established as a printer unto the church. Whoop, 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 whoop. Love that. That would be my favorite. Speaking of that being my favorite, I was called by a member of our youth conference committee, and she's one of my really dear friends. And she was like, do you happen to do this? Meaning like design stuff. And do you happen to print stuff? And I'm like, what? It was like right after we read all that printer stuff. And I was like, those are my favorite things to do, designing and printing stuff. So it was pretty fun. So anyway, we're figuring stuff out. Okay, so the direction given to the saints was to start purchasing land. Land could be bought for $1.25 an acre. Oh man, we should have bought some tons of years ago. And so the Lord directs them to buy as much land as possible, even every tract. Wow. So this is a quote from Milton V. Bachman Jr. and Richard O. Cohen. Said as this: near the end of 1831, Bishop Partridge, representing the church, purchased 63 acres of land at Independence, Missouri, including the spot where Joseph Smith had placed a cornerstone for the future temple. Nice. And then in the improvement era, 1952, we read, today, 1952, the church owns much of the 63 acres originally designated at the Independence Temple lot, but does not own the 3 acres where the temple cornerstone was placed by Prophet Joseph Smith on August 3rd, 1831. That parcel of land is owned by the Church of Christ Temple lot, one of the factions which broke from the church following the martyrdom of the prophet and the patriarch, end quote. Actually, that was 1952. But in 2025, we do now own those 3 acres, which is pretty amazing. President Nelson told us that in a recent general conference. You will have to go look that up. So that's exciting, huh? So Zion cannot exist any faster than it can be built. Immediately, the Lord starts assigning work to these elders in Israel. A great lesson can be learned from the jobs these men are assigned. These men had worked hard to develop skills previously in their lives, and now the Lord will use those skills to build Zion. What a great example for us. Yes. Okay, I love how they're breaking it down for us here. Okay, so Edward Partridge, acting as bishop, was to divide the inheritances of land. He had just had some practice with this in Kirtland. So perfect. Maybe he liked it, maybe he didn't. We don't know. At least I don't know. Sidney Gilbert is to act as an agent to the saints and start a store to sell whatsoever things the disciples may need. Since Sidney had been a partner in the Newell K. Whitney store, he had the skills already to do this. Ooh, I love it. So he is to set up a store to sell stuff. Okay, and then W.W. Phelps, sounds like whatever the disciples might need. Probably first was food. So probably it was a grocery store combined with other stuff, right? And then W.W. Phelps was to begin his work as a printer. As a young man, he had some training in printing and editing and was the editor of the publication called the Western Courier. Amazing. Okay, and then Oliver Cowdery was to assist W.W. Phelps in these endeavors and in the sense act as a spiritual editor. After assisting, yes, because it's funny, it's hard when you're the designer and the editor. You need somebody to like bounce it off of, like, am I even making sense? Does this line up? And so it's always good. After assisting Joseph in the translation of the plates, Oliver had heaven-guided experience already in these things. So perfect, right? Okay, verse 12. And lo, if the world receive his writings, behold, here is wisdom. Let him obtain whatsoever he can obtain in righteousness for the good of the saints. And let my servant Oliver Cowdery assist him, okay, even as I have commanded, in whatsoever place I shall appoint unto him, to copy and to correct and select, that all things may be right before me, as it shall be proved by the Spirit through him. And thus let those of whom I have spoken be planted in the land of Zion, as speedily as can be, with their families to do those things, even as I have spoken. And now concerning the gathering, let the bishop and the agent make preparations for those families which have been commanded to come to this land as soon as possible, and plant them in their inheritance. And unto the residue of both elders and members, further directions shall be given hereafter. Even so, amen. Amazing. Okay. So these elders, however, were not to simply begin their work alone. They were to bring their families. This is what Zion was really all about. The creation of covenant eternal families as one eternal family with God. The bishop is to help the family succeed. Parley P. Pratt explained what it was like in the beginning for these families. He wrote this. Okay, this Colesville branch constituted the first settlers of the members of the church in Missouri. They had arrived late in the summer and cut some hay for their cattle, sowed a little grain, and prepared some ground for cultivation, and were engaged during the fall and winter in building log cabins. The winter was cold, and for some time, about 10 families lived in one log cabin. And we complain about our kids, you know. The winter was cold, and for some time, about 10 families lived in one. Oh, yeah, okay. Which was open and unfinished, while the frozen ground served for a floor. Oh. Our food consisted, okay, our 11-year-old would love that. Our food consisted of beef and a little bread made of corn, which had been grated into coarse meal by rubbing the ears on a tin grater. This was rather an inconvenient way of living for a sick person, but it was for the gospel's sake, and all were very cheerful and happy. Oh my heck. That's crazy, right? Those people just never cease to amaze me. Or never, yes, continue to never cease to amaze me. Sometimes I wonder about those those expressions. I'm like, wait, did I just say that in the right way? I don't know. They're just amazing is what I want to say. And we enjoyed many happy seasons in our prayer and other meetings, and the Spirit of the Lord was poured out upon us, and even on the little children, insomuch that many of 8, 10, or 12 years of age spake and prayed and prophesied in our meetings and in our family worship. There was a spirit of peace and union and love and goodwill manifested in this little church in the wilderness, the memory of which will be ever dear to my heart, end quote. Oh, I love that. Parley P. Pratt. Autobiography of Parley P. Pratt. I think that is so sweet. And isn't that so true? When our kids, we were driving to the temple, or maybe on the way back or on the way to, anyway. And we went to the Syracuse Temple open house, and I was playing some Forrest Frank, and it was just amazing. So we have a 12 passenger van, and like the row right behind me was singing so loud, and my son was in that row, just Forrest Frank, like his songs of worship and talking about Jesus and hope and great stuff and hallelujah, and all these things. And I was just like, this is the best. Like, for real, I was like, I wish I could record them singing so that I could play it whenever I feel sad and down, It was such a sweet memory, but if I would have recorded them, they would have stopped because they would have known that I was recording them. And so then, people don't want to be recorded when they're belting out Forrest Frank unless you're their mom. And it was just like so touching. And I was like, I hope that they remember this moment forever. Right? And that's the part of summer I don't want to forget and don't want to redo. But the rest of it, we could totally do without. You know what I'm saying? Oh. And anyway, when little children preach, share their testimony, it is powerful and it is amazing. And you just want to be better because of it, Anyway, okay. That is it. So I'm going to do the Read It, Live It. So let me go get it. Okay, here's the Read It, Live It. I don't even think I can read this. Okay, really quick. So it says, when Sidney Gilbert was given the task to buy land for the new city of Zion, he was told to purchase it in righteousness and in wisdom. These two principles can guide all of us as we do the work of the Lord. Work in righteousness and remember wisdom. Ooh, I love that. Purchase it in righteousness and wisdom. Righteousness and wisdom. Okay, Until Doctrine and Covenants section 58, stay strong, warrior.